former Health Minister, Dr Zweli Mkhize, reportedly resigning just hours before President Cyril Ramaphosa announced his new cabinet. Mkhize left cabinet under the cloud of that dodgy 150 million rand digital vibes contract that he and his family are alleged to have benefited from. This follows an investigation by the Daily Maverick's investigative unit, Scorpio, which exposed questionable money flows from digital vibes. Now, the Daily Maverick's investigative reporter and author of that Scorpio report, Pieter Louis Myburg, joins us now to elaborate on the story just in general. Peter, I want to begin with your thoughts on, watching that cabinet reshuffle last night, hearing then of the health minister just hours before supposedly tendering his resignation. No word from the president as he thanked Zweli Mkhize for his contribution to the health department on these damning allegations in the SIU report.
Look, that'll certainly disappoint in light of the fact that President Ramaphosa has vowed to at least at some point, bring the public into his confidence and allow us to have a peek at what the SIU had found. I really believe that there should have been a moment at least where the President gave some indication of what the findings were. We are still in the dark as regards that. It does seem that the matter and the handling of the resignation does, to some extent, not fully factor in the seriousness of the digital vibes scandal, and Minister Mkhize, or former Minister Mkhize, has been allowed a pretty comfortable exit from cabinet without really underpinning the importance of this issue.
Yeah. As you say, it goes no way in fulfilling that promise from the President around clean governance and around consequences for ministers who behave in this way.
It really doesn't. Look, so the SIU investigation, of course, has been with the President for many, many weeks now.
Yeah.
And I think it's becoming increasingly frustrating for South Africans, especially South Africans who are tired of the kind of corruption that hamper important departments such as the Department of Health, that we aren't allowed access. We're not allowed to become privy to the findings of these investigations. The SIU is a public body supported with taxpayers' money, of course. It's an investigation that was wholly funded by taxpayers' money. The system as it is, in my opinion, is a little wanting, because a SIU report gets concluded, it's placed on the desk of the President, and it becomes his sole discretion in terms of who is privy to it. I mean, even currently the Portfolio Committee of Health in Parliament is battling to get access to that report. And we will certainly try and, on the one hand, keep on digging into this contract through our own investigation, as we have been doing, to conclude or to get further information as to the money flows. But I think also the release of the SIU report itself is also very important.
Yeah. As you say, the SIU itself funded through taxpayers' money. That 150 million rand that we now know was funneled to digital vibes itself, taxpayers' money that would have gone a long way in addressing some of the gaps in our COVID-19 response. Zweli Mkhize now says he will take this SIU report on judicial review. What do you reckon? What do you make of that?
Yeah, that seems to be the expected response from individuals implicated in this kind of scandal. There certainly is a long history of people either vowing to do that, sometimes not coming to that point, or either actually doing it. But I think it's a wonderful way for the integrity of the SIU's report to be tested. Why not? It's fully within the minister's right, former minister's right, to do so. And it'll allow possibly for further insight into the matter, because in civil proceedings, when these kind of issues get aired in court, of course, it becomes a matter of public record. And, I certainly hope that this is a case where the minister hasn't merely promised to take the issue further in terms of a high court review application, but will actually do so. And I think, unfortunately, also in the past, we've seen people promising that they would do that, and then these threats kind of really die down pretty quickly. So let's see if he actually goes that far.
It's very interesting to read through the former minister's resignation letter to the President, because essentially what the gist of it is that he's saying the SIU rushed to get to a predetermined conclusion. And even when they spoke to him, when the SIU spoke to him, he was ambushed, he says, with information that he received at the last minute when they were addressing certain issues with him.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that also, in a sense, his resignation letter speaks to his sense of accountability, or sort of his willingness to cop to what had occurred in the Digital Vibes scandal. A good 90% of the portion of the letter is taken up by his excuses and his dismay with the SIU process, as opposed to, acknowledging the fact that 150 million rand was drained from his department and ended up in these various very dubious destinations. But certainly, as you mentioned, those are some of these kind of issues he highlighted. He kind of feels that the SIU, apart from having a predetermined outcome, they supposedly also ignored key information that he apparently was willing to put on the table. He kind of feels that in some instances he was absolutely blindsided by the SIU's own information. He hadn't a time to respond to it. But, once again, I think a court of law is a very good platform to test those kind of allegations. As far as I understand, I don't have full insight in the SIU's kind of workings and mechanisms, but it's an institution that typically would follow a particular, structure and method in its workings that would be pretty much regulated and set in law. I really would be surprised if it did not follow the proper procedures to get the minister's full input and responses in terms of very important findings and certain elements of the investigation.
So you've been following quite closely the story, but also the money flows. Where did all of that money, the 150 million rand, go? And this week you uncovered a very particular part of that money flows insofar as money that was used in large part to open, I think it was a hair salon and a nail salon for Zweli Mkhize's son and daughter-in-law. So in his response, in Dodgy Mkhize's response to questions around where those hundreds of thousands of rands came from, he doesn't actually deny that the money came from business associates of his father, but he does say he had independent relationships with those business associates outside of his father, Zweli Mkhize. He doesn't deny receiving the money, but he says they were gifts.
Yes, absolutely. Look, and interestingly, Dodgy Mkhize, another individual who's taken umbrage with the SIU's methods and the way that they conducted the investigations. But, certainly, typically we do see when individuals actually go as far as acknowledging that payments were made to them. That doesn't happen too frequently. There does seem to be all these various kind of, justifications or excuses for it. I suppose ultimately it would be for a court of law, and also separately from that, the public to decide how willing they are to accept these justifications for the payments. The facts stand that a contract was awarded by the Department of Health, and then money from that contract ended with the minister's family.
Yeah.
And in a context in South Africa where corruption is such a problem, that is always going to cause concern. It really is up to us as investigative journalists. We'll test the reasons for those payments. I can certainly say that it looks very strange. I mean, in the particular time frame that the contract was awarded, the gifts, as you call it, then supposedly just kind of flows from the contract's main mastermind, Pieter Louis, to the minister's son. It really does seem like very curious timing for such a businesswoman to be lavishing gifts on the minister's children.
It does appear that more and more people are using that excuse, doesn't it? That these are just gifts, no strings attached. I don't know if you have any friends like that, Pieter.
Unfortunately not. I wish I did. I could do that in my life.
Pieter Louis Myburg, thanks very much for your input on the story. He's an investigative reporter with the Daily Maverick's Scorpio unit, very closely following the money flows insofar as that Digital Vibes contract is concerned.